The snow that remembered a name, a single snowflake carrying a wish from years ago, finally found the girl who made it. In a valley shaped like a cradle, surrounded by pine-covered hills, there was a town called Silverbrook. It wasn't much larger than a handful of streets, but at Christmas time, it felt like the center of the world. Every December, the lampposts wore wreaths, the cafe windows glowed amber, and the river froze in polite stillness, as if holding its breath to listen to the carolers. But the real magic, the kind that made people believe in wishes again, belonged to the snow. The townsfolk used to joke that Silverbrook snow fell differently. It drifted slower, sparkled longer, and, if you believed the old stories, sometimes listened. At the edge of town lived Nora Whitfield, a woman in her 30s with soft brown hair, a quiet smile, and the kind of sadness that didn't ask for attention. She ran the little stationery shop on Main Street, where she sold greeting cards, handmade paper, and pens that made you want to write, even when you had nothing to say. Nora loved winter, though it made her lonely. She would often stand outside after closing, watching the snow swirl under the lamplight. Her breath would fog the air, and for a few moments, she could almost hear the world whispering back. No one knew it, but every year, on the first night of snowfall, Nora made the same wish. She'd look at the sky and say softly, "If you see him, tell him I remember. The heart's winter, a lost name." Once, long ago, when Nora was 16, she'd had a best friend named Eli. They grew up on the same street, shared the same sled, the same jokes, and the same secret. They both wanted to leave their small town someday and see what lay beyond the hills. But one Christmas Eve, there was an accident on the river. The ice gave way, and the world lost one of its brightest boys. Eli was gone before anyone could help. The town went quiet that winter, as if afraid to speak his name too loudly. But Nora never forgot it. She still kept the paper snowflake he had folded for her in art class. It hung by her window every December, a little yellowed now, but still beautiful. 6 perfect points cut by teenage hands and laughter. The years moved like pages turning too fast. Nora finished school, took over her father's shop, and learned how to smile for customers even when her heart was far away. And yet, whenever the snow began to fall, it seemed to whisper something just out of reach, like a memory calling through time. If she listened hard enough, she swore she could almost hear her name in the wind. The spark of wonder. The snow's secret. That year, Christmas arrived quietly. Nora had stayed late in the shop wrapping last-minute gifts for neighbors. She brewed a cup of tea and pulled her shawl tighter as snow tapped against the window. Outside, Silverbrook slept under a sky full of stars. She turned off the lights, locked the door, and began walking home. The air was still, the kind of stillness that makes sound feel like an intrusion. Her boots left neat prints in the snow, and the world seemed freshly made. Halfway down Maple Street, she paused. Snowflakes were falling thicker now, glowing faintly in the lamplight. They drifted toward her like old friends, soft and slow, landing on her coat, her hair, her lashes. And then she heard it. A whisper, quiet but clear, woven into the rhythm of the snow. "Nora." She froze. The voice was familiar, impossibly so. She turned around. No one was there, only snow falling like a sigh. Her heartbeat stumbled. "Hello?" she said to the empty street. "Nora." It came again, lighter this time, like laughter folded into wind. She should have been frightened, but instead, warmth bloomed behind her ribs. She looked up. The snowflakes above her seemed to shimmer with purpose, swirling into faint shapes, circles, lines, then letters. For a single heartbeat, the air spelled out a name. Eli. The letters flickered like candlelight and then scattered into the night sky. Nora stood very still. Tears blurred her eyes, but she smiled through them. Eli, she whispered, you remembered. A breeze moved past her cheek, gentle, playful, like the brush of a mitten. The streetlight flickered. The world seemed to glow from within. The gift within. What the snow carried over the next few days, the snowfall in Silverbrook was unlike anything anyone could remember. It fell steady and light, never too deep, never too harsh, just perfect, as if it knew exactly what people needed. And everywhere Nora went, it followed her. When she opened her shop in the morning, the snow framed her door like lace. When she delivered cards to the post office, it shimmered on her path, untouched until her footsteps passed. Even customers began to notice. Funny thing, said old Mrs. Turner, the snow outside your shop sparkles more than anywhere else. Nora just smiled. Maybe it likes good stationery. But inside she knew. The snow had remembered her wish. Each night she would light a single candle in her window, pour tea into 2 cups, and sit by the glass as the snow drifted down. It never failed. Sooner or later it would spell his name just once, before fading away again. Some nights she told the snow her worries, about her father's health, about the shop's slow season, about how some days she felt invisible, and every time the wind would hush, the flakes would gather softly, and somehow she'd feel lighter. Word spread through town that Nora's shop had become a lucky place. People stopped by just to stand under the awning for a moment, and, strangely enough, those who did often left smiling, or calling an old friend, or forgiving an old hurt. It was as though the snow's memory carried kindness from one heart to another. The whisper of Christmas. Remembering forward. On Christmas Eve, Silverbrook held its annual tree lighting in the square. Children sang, parents clasped mugs of cider, and the mayor gave the same cheerful speech he always did. Nora stood near the back, wrapped in her scarf, watching the lights flicker to life on the big pine tree. When the first notes of Silent Night began, snow started to fall again. It swirled down in slow spirals, softer than a sigh. A little girl standing beside her tugged at her coat. "Miss Nora," she said, "look." Nora followed her finger. Above the crowd in the falling snow, letters began to take shape, faint, glowing, floating in the air for everyone to see. This time, they didn't spell Eli, they spelled "Remember Love." Gasps rippled through the square. Someone whispered, "Is that real?" Another said, "It's a trick of the lights." But Nora just smiled, because she knew better. The flakes danced, then scattered, settling gently on hats and shoulders and eyelashes. And as they melted, laughter rose, quiet at first, then warm and wide. People hugged, some cried. Others simply looked up at the sky, feeling something they hadn't felt in years. Later, when the square had emptied and the lights dimmed, Nora walked home alone through the snow-covered streets. At her window, she hung Eli's old paper snowflake beside her candle. It was fragile now, but it still caught the glow just right. She whispered, "Thank you." A soft wind brushed the glass in reply. For a moment, she thought she saw footprints, small, bare, leading from her door down to the river path, glowing faintly before fading back into white. Epilogue: The Snow That Stayed. The next morning, the children of Silverbrook ran through town shouting that their snowmen had names written on them, kind words like joy, hope, forgive. Adults smiled and shook their heads, saying it was just coincidence, but even they spoke softer that day. And when someone asked Nora if she had seen the strange lights in the snow, she just laughed gently and said, "Sometimes the world remembers us better than we remember ourselves." That winter, no one in Silverbrook felt forgotten. Not the widows, not the shopkeepers, not the lonely hearts watching the snow from behind their curtains. The snowfall that year carried something alive, a whisper of names, a trace of kindness, a memory of someone who once loved enough to stay behind. And when spring finally came and the snow began to melt, it left the town changed. People greeted one another by name again. They lingered at doorways, shared bread, wrote letters just because. Nora swept the shop one last time before closing for the evening. She looked at the paper snowflake in the window, faded now, edges curled. She didn't take it down. She smiled at it, the way you smile at someone you've learned to let go of but never lose. The street outside was bare, the sky gray and soft. But as she turned off the light, a single snowflake floated past the glass and landed on the sill. It didn't melt, not right away. It sat there, catching the light, a tiny star remembering its name. And that's how Christmas found its way into another heart.